Hi, everybody. My name is Mickey Cohan. I'm leading the IBC accelerators and looking after my own production company, and very happy to be back at MBTS on their 10-year anniversary. Round of applause for MBTS. Happy anniversary. Happy birthday, MBTS. Day 2, here we are. Thank you guys so much for coming to this AI Media Zone stage. We do understand there's lots of stuff going on here, so we really, really appreciate everybody popping by. And I've got a this is so weird. This is so weird, this podium in the middle.
I can't
Our
move.
third speaker.
Stand at it.
Should I do like a guest lecture?
Do that.
And just like, we have a very, very cool panel today because we've got not only, well, hold on a second, because we're going to be talking about like the creative use cases of AI and where we're coming into play. But just without further ado, Benjamin Field from Deep Field Studios. Big round of applause, please. And Guy Gadney from Charismatic. Thank you, thank you. Big round of applause. And this is Guy, our I'm going for high five, man. Don't leave me.
Sorry, I didn't know what
Okay,
what was
our
happening.
hat trick of MPTS sessions together. So
Yeah,
we have to. We're meeting year on year to bring you the knowledge and insights of what happens with AI in creative production. So boys, we're going to unpack this, and we do have Slido. I'm leaving this up on purpose because we had a comment from the audience last time. We just want to make sure everybody sees Slido. Get it in. This is going to be a super interactive, really fun conversation. I want all you guys involved, so get your questions in. We got a good 100 or so people in our beautiful studio audience, and in fact, we're going to close off a rope here and not invite anybody else, and keep this a very VIP session too. So we do want to be talking about, obviously, where AI is coming in to enhance your creativity with your productions, things that you're going to market with, things that you're building behind the scenes, what these workflows are like. Who is directing an AI assistant workflow? Is it the human, the tool, something in between? But we're going to start with you, Ben. And I know we've got a roll VT, so I think you've got the clicker.
I've got a clicker.
So roll VT,
I've
and then we get stuck in. Thank
clicker.
you.
We're feeding that into an AI in order to give him a personalized plan that sets him on a path.
After being a healthier version of him in 12 months' time. This is real data, and we're going to use that and turn it into an avatar that you can have a conversation with.
In real time.
Okay, what the hell just happened?
That was me as a lady.
It was.
Good.
It is 2026.
Basically, one of the areas that we use AI for is to anonymize contributors for documentaries. Now, there are obviously multiple ways that you can, you could utilize tech like that within scripted and unscripted, but the ways that we've been employed to do it so far on numerous productions is to anonymize vulnerable contributors for mainstream broadcast. And so we started doing this in sort of July, August last year on productions that I can't talk about, or I'll be shot. But they have come out. I think it's a really, really interesting use case. You can tell from that there is a sort of a pixel perfect matching, if you like, from the original contributor through to the new contributor, new visuals. We give sign-off and approvals to everybody at every stage of that process so that everybody is happy with what is being presented. That's voice and visual. And it allows for I hate to say it, it's typically, I have to say, it's typically the victims of crime who are often the ones who have their stories redacted in some way because they have to have their voice changed sort of in a muffled kind of way, or which
pixelated,
or they're pixelated, or they're sort of blacked out and silhouetted, which of course means that when we talk, even now I'm gesticulating largely through nerves, it's fair to say, but I'm gesticulating, I'm using my face to tell a story, to convey a message, and criminals, they generally get to tell their story in full view, and they get their story heard, whereas victims do not have that, because they have rights to be protected, and absolutely they should be protected. But that doesn't mean that their story is less valuable. And for the first time, this does actually allow for true authenticity of story and of message to be conveyed through the screen. And I think that, so we work with AI in a way that is truly, we believe, and you are always the hero in your own story, right? But we truly believe that everything we do with AI is what we refer to as additive. We will do something that enables something that couldn't possibly have happened before to happen now. And this is a really, really good example of that. And so, yeah, I think it's a great case study to open up with.
Yeah, so you've done, obviously, when you're working with documentaries and real people,
yeah.
Again, just to emphasize, other work you've done, like Lucy Letby stories or things like that, where does the workflow come in of where you're doing that creation? Like,
where does the
go
workflow
under the
come
hood,
through?
yeah. So what combination are you using to get to A to B, and where are you starting from?
Well, I can't talk about the Lucy Letby stuff at all. But I was able to mention I can talk about other. I can talk about other ones we've done. But so the workflow on other documentaries that we've done is that we can either use deepfake. So I mean, it's important to note that a human starts, and is in charge of every step of that process. Nothing is left to a machine to just sort of get on with it. There is a human in the lead and in the loop, and those are two very different things. But we will start out by, there is a casting process, right? So I mean, let's use that for example. The lady that I turned into is actually my wife.
Now she is.
Weirdly, it was a bit awkward at the time. But no, her face was changed because, funnily enough, she didn't want her face conveyed to everybody here. But actually, the physicality is actually my wife's, and it's my wife's dress. And I can tell you it does move in that way, so there is a level of authenticity. So we look at that casting process.
Yeah.
Now, that can either be a real human being, or it could be a completely AI-generated human being. Avatar. And what we do is we give production a range of choices. So for some productions, we've done 60 different bodies, faces to choose from, and it is up to production to just choose one of them. In the same way as you do any kind of casting process.
Right, yeah.
And then we will generate and iterate on that depending on what the requirements are. So we can be really bespoke over it. Okay, if it's a real person, but we want to, anonymize them a little bit further, then we'll change certain features, maybe hair color or length or hairstyle or whatever it is. So, which for people like me would be very useful. But, so that's the starting point. And then we feed it into our bespoke pipeline, where there is a bit of a secret sauce, so I'm probably not going to give all of that away. But
partial sauce.
But it's fair to say that we don't use consumer models particularly. We will do everything on a local server so that it's all contained. There's no confidentiality problems. We use Comfy UI for all of our pipelines.
Right.
We don't go out there and use anything that's cloud-based, for instance. And then we will keep working on that until it's right. Now, the really interesting thing is the fact that AI is still AI, right? And just by a show of hands, how many people have actively tried to use Gen AI in one way, shape, or another?
For a human character?
Well, yeah, anything really. Actually, that is improving year on year, actually, as a number. But it is still remarkable how many people haven't. But what's interesting is that once you've done that, you realise very quickly that AI is rubbish. And it takes an awful lot to get the generations to the level that the output you could actually use. So even when we're doing stuff like this, we will probably find that only 1 out of every 5 iterations is right. But the speed at which you can iterate and change things means that it still works within a very cost-effective production pipeline. So the work that we do actually has a very low cost per minute by comparison to other techniques.
Right, and then when it comes to the iteration of the characters, what's been the challenges there then when you are building these characters? I mean,
I think there's always AI is often seen as something that just fixes things off the bat. And as I've just said, with that level of iteration and having to redeploy them and all the rest of it, I think there's still a challenge of creating character consistency,
right.
And that is improving. As you will know and undoubtedly talk about very shortly. That is improving day by day, week by week, month by month. But actually getting different camera angles to reflect the same person and have exactly the same identity is still a challenge. and we have to work very hard at building what's called LoRa's in order to try and maintain that authenticity. But what's interesting is the fact that, that example that I showed you there was actually made back in, I don't know, July, I think. And the methodology of now creating consistent characters has improved. And not only are we in a point that, AI is capable of creating consistent characters, once you've worked out what the methodology is, and I'm happy to talk a bit through that off stage. But also, AI has only until very recently always been 8-bit H.264 output, which is great for digital, but rubbish for broadcast. And so we developed our own pipeline that allowed for 10-bit HDR, which was sufficient for many of the major broadcasters. We then managed to get that to 12-bit HDR, and we did that at the point that Industrial Light and Magic announced on their LinkedIn page, because that's apparently where they announce things these days, don't we all? It's amazing to be here. So they announced that they had just cracked 10-bit HDR by the time that we cracked 12-bit. And now, this week, only this week, which is why my face is up there all blinking day.
Is this an MPTS exclusive?
An exclusive.
Ben, reveal.
Is the fact that we can actually do full-range EXR output, which works in traditional VFX pipelines. And I know that some models will say that they are capable of doing EXR output now, which is great. But what's lovely is the fact that we can take any model and turn it into EXR output. So it's not defined on the model. We can take any model and make EXR output from it natively.
Thank you so much for that show and tell. That's a lot of information in a short space of time. But Ben is around for signings
all day,
or autographs and signings and beers later. So from
people can buy me beers, right? That's the way.
That's right. Please buy Ben a beer, and then he'll answer all your questions. However, we do have Slido, and I have a microphone, so I can ask him right now. So from the documentary, factual things like that, I want to move over to you, Guy, because I know the trajectory that you've had throughout your career, and especially with Charisma, now Charismatic AI, looking at the characters as characters and storytelling, and where AI has come in to enable you as a storyteller where you weren't able to do some of those things before. So I think you've got a video to play, if you can roll your VT.
I'll show that, but to pick up on what you said, it's been an interesting journey. I mean, I've been building AI for creative purposes and within the creative sectors for over 15 years now, which is a bit mad. Charismatic we started about 4 years ago, and by way of introduction, it was a journey we started with Channel 4, with Aardman Animations. I maintain we're the only AI studio in the world to have employed a professional digital ethicist to go through our design process to make sure, and by the way, top tip from that is she used a process called consequence scanning, which I urge everyone to use in your own workflows of intended and unintended consequences. But so we started building this engine, which essentially takes your idea that you've got creative concept, expands that out directly into scripts, goes from scripts then out into beyond storyboards. We skipped that step because it's too easy, into shot lists and then out into video. So what I'm going to show you now is just a quick output of some of, and build on what Ben's saying, the quality that we see that we're starting to get, starting with a sort of fairly simple image that I quite like of a guy on TikTok. last year sometime. So, and the point here really is, by the way, all of those are part of excerpts from shows. They're not just, hey, we made a clip in AI. These are things which, as Ben was saying, that consistency problem, which again, we felt we solved last year and have been building on ever since, has been a way to maintain the story. You've got to be able to maintain it for a period of time. So the way we tend to find ourselves working at the moment is incredible collaborations as co-productions with production partners, with studios, Hollywood studios, obviously in the States, networks, broadcasters here. But we had two trailers at Cannes this week for films, one animation and one live action. And to Ben's point, I think the way in which we're starting to see these is the animation, funnily enough, was harder than the live action because of the level of detail that the director wanted, and making sure that every color, the color of the curtains were right. The set on you can see the demo on our stand, which is just behind you there.
Prime real estate.
The live action was interesting because it was shot originally at Twickenham Film Studios with a photographer, with a DOP, with actors. We then took actors, by the way, and 4 of them is really, really hard. If you try and limit the number of casts you've got, because 4 is hard. We then put the costume on, put the makeup on, situated them in the Norwegian forests, and then put in the monster that is chasing them and so forth. As Ben says, we are now at a level where you cannot tell the difference. And yes, it's 10-bit. Yes, it's high definition. Yes, it's the technical side. As a viewer, when I put the two together, frame by frame, paw for paw, I cannot tell the difference. So we are over that threshold. And to your question, what the philosophical piece that I always ask myself in this AI world is, what now must we do? What does that allow us to do? What does it allow us to create in the content?
Yeah. And what kind of technical constraints? Like, can you tell us about, like, the kind of pros and cons that you felt, especially when you have to iterate your own software, especially in.
Well, I tell you what, it's a bit like. Sort of the Marshall McLuhan line of we look forward into the future through a rearview mirror, right? So what you've seen over the last year or so is everyone using AI to do traditional processes, faster, cheaper, efficiencies, and that sort of stuff. But actually, I think what we're starting to see coming out now is, and they're coming out on TikTok, there's a lot of young creators coming out who are sort of, I suppose, unshackled by traditional processes, and that gap between the creative idea that they've got and the screen has never been smaller. You don't have to go from an idea out into, iterations of script and then storyboards and then fundraising and then people coming in, the producer not liking it, the commissioners having their 2 cents before it gets to screen. What we're seeing is people can get that idea out faster.
Yeah.
So what that's doing is exploring it further, and if you want to push the limit, how far can it go? I always love the line in The Matrix, one of my favorite films, where about it's not thinking about how to bend the spoon. First, you need to imagine that there is no spoon. In our world, it's not about how to work with the camera; it's that there is no camera. Now what? And that allows us to pull off shots that. We did one which was set in the Battle of Trafalgar, where the camera starts above the water, above the battle, and then goes down underwater. And you can see the carnage of battle underwater, and then back up again. And that sequence, which is about 10, 20 seconds, it would have been impossible, to do the drone shot would have been really hard. To do VFX is prohibitive.
Yeah.
So I think this sort of newness is exciting.
Yeah, but it's still human input. Completely directing that, and same for Ben. Maybe you could both comment on that, because there is this like, human in the loop or human centric, but it has to be when you are being commissioned to do something for humans.
We are in a creative sector, and everybody involved with it is creative, and so just because AI exists, it doesn't mean that creatives are going to stop being creative. It just means that they find a new thing to be creative with, right? And so yes, there are challenges, and yes, there are ethical concerns and things, and ways in which we must behave responsibly. And we're doing an awful lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that adoption is ethical and responsible. And so as we're talking about the possibilities, you have to imagine that we're doing so under an umbrella of doing so in a responsible and ethical way, and in a way that respects human endeavor and copyright and all the things that we know that the industry really needs in order to survive.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is the fact that AI is often positioned as the problem. Whereas actually, I'm going to challenge that I think AI is actually
Except for
the
on
answer.
stage today, yeah.
Well, yeah. So AI, I think, in many ways, is the answer. We have a real problem in the industry at the moment of commissioning budgets being lower, of spend being lower, and of course, if spend is lower, it means we can actually do less. But with AI, as we're discussing, you can actually do more with less. And what we're finding at the moment is you're getting an awful lot of AI native people who, by which I do generally refer to the younger generations who are coming up with this in their, this in the palm of their hand and they're playing with it. And so you end up in a scenario where actually there's an educated layer coming through because they've grown up with it. They've got it in their hands all the time. And so they are proving what is possible with less. And that means that and the reason that things don't get commissioned is because of financial risk. There needs to be a return.
Yeah.
So there was a thing at the Oscars a couple of years ago, which was, oh great, somebody called it out on stage, and I wish I could remember who it was. Great, $100 million movie has won Best Picture, and they said on stage, but where are the $10 million movies? And the reason that $10 million is still an awful lot of money, and the reason is the fact that actually you need to elevate what you're making with that $10 million.
Yeah.
And now we're in a position where that idea of being additive.
Yeah.
We're actually saying, right, is our shows now being put into production because of AI capability that wouldn't otherwise have been put into production because they would have been too expensive to make? So therefore, that isn't reductive. We're not talking about job losses in that moment. There are others where that is not the case.
And it's funny, you should say the movies, because someone's just asked a question around, are you expected to see a fully AI-generated film?
Oh, absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, absolutely. To finish that point, is that if you are taking a show into production that wouldn't have been able to make before the advent of AI because it would have made costs too prohibitive to have done so, all of those jobs are additive. That's fact. If you couldn't have made it because it was too expensive and now you can make it because it's cheaper, well, that's an additive moment. And that means that you can take more creative risks, and that means more stories can be told. So to your point of will we see an AI animated movie come out? Critters is out. Is Critters actually out at Cannes?
There's probably loads out, right? You just don't know about it.
The main point is that things are in production now that we will see in 2027. Okay, so the adoption is happening right now. There is not necessarily the awareness of the adoption because the films haven't made it out yet.
Yes.
The programs are not out there. But you wait. I'm aware, and I'm sure Guy's aware, of lots of stuff that's been commissioned that will appear at the back end of 26, 27.
Yes.
And that means that we will see it.
Exactly. I'm so sorry.
Can answer that question very quickly.
So it wasn't an animated film. It was a fully AI
that's live action.
Generated theatrical film would be different.
Let me tell you some stats. We're currently involved in a full-length animated film.
Yes.
3 of them that will be in the cinemas. 3 by the end of the year. That's 1 every 4 months.
Mm-hmm. I hope that answers the question.
But the live action, given that AI actually is animation at its core, is not too far away. Not too far away.
There's been a question back to you, Ben, around, we have loads coming in from the audience. I could put my notes away, but luckily our beautiful audience is asking a lot of the questions I wanted to layer in a little bit. But there's someone wanting to know around, is there a risk of subtly enhancing the characteristics or behaviors to make the anonymized character sympathetic to the audience?
Very
good question, but it's been bumped to the top, and I think it's
that would suggest that we are doing something that is a creative decision. And so that isn't a question of AI, that is a question about creativity and production. And so the AI is not going to do anything that makes them more or less sympathetic to an audience. And that, and that is primarily the element that we're discussing today. Could somebody decide to make somebody more sympathetic by making them, visually different to how they appear naturally? Yes, absolutely they could do. And that question, that creative approach needs to be analysed and questioned and discussed. But that isn't necessarily anything that AI will intrinsically do. AI just maps one thing onto another.
Yeah, but I suppose like when you are dealing with a broadcaster, or you are putting out, there'll be people to be looking at that as far as the storytelling. So that's still compliance, there's still due diligence.
I was going to say, it's within the standard realms of production that we still have to do. I mean, I have turned things down in the past because I don't believe that they were the right things to do. And this is about human in the lead, not in the... You can be compliant to it and just let it happen, or... you can stand up and you can go, actually, I don't think that's right. And that's a personal decision. That's a human decision, not an AI one.
I mean, but if you look at reality shows throughout the beginning of time, the last like 30, 40 years, a human's going to be produced to be more sympathetic or potentially, depending on the story.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Ben. Thank you. There's a couple questions being bumped to the top here around, but I'm going to go back to Guy around. Do you feel that AI-generated characters need to be acknowledged on screen, like in the credits maybe? And is it going to continued, or maybe like this person suggesting maybe that's caption called digitally, well, anonymized, maybe back to Ben, but I'm going to throw this back to Guy.
Well,
so when you are creating something that is obviously this hybrid.
So let's run a scenario on this. The first thing is I've got a slightly contentious view, which is actually don't label AI content, label human-generated content. In the same way we label organic milk and can charge for it more, because it's going to be so ubiquitous that actually if we celebrate the creativity and celebrate
organic milk.
Charge it, it's a better way to go because of its ubiquity. However, imagine the scenario that if you do label AI content and you're sitting down and watching a movie, how many times is that generated with AI thing going to flash up on screen just at a key moment, a romance moment or an action moment? It's going to be disturbing to the creative piece. You might have it at the beginning, you might have it at the end. But I think there's this is one of the things around sort of it nudges onto regulation, nudges onto a lot of the pieces that Ofcom here, the government, the various others need to have a view on.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with you, Guy, but there's a question around, are you, well, maybe for both of you, like a soundbite from both, please. Starting back with Guy, are you training your systems on your own footage? That is in order to match the studio film material, or else on what? Maybe not necessarily what you're working on now, but throughout your learnings.
So our focus has been on story to date, on the ability to craft story. That's our defensibility. That's what no one's got close to. But as we move into the video generation model, we're not touching that. What we tend to find is that when people want to use charismatic, if they're a broadcaster, they will often have done an enterprise deal with a particular company, say Google. Right. And there's a very real commercial reason why that may have happened. So what we've enabled in the system, in the engine underneath, is that if someone has gone down that pathway, it's a drop-down menu. Select Google, and then you're out and running. It's a incredibly, the copyright debate is still very heated. It's much more nuanced than most people realize.
Yes.
Even that word, when we talked about it yesterday on the legal and ethical panel here, and thankfully we had lawyers on the panel who were explaining.
Thankfully, yes.
But, our approach always at the moment is you can either step back and not do it and wait for that problem to resolve. Trouble is, when that problem is resolved, you're going to look up and there are going to be 10,000 competitors who didn't wait.
Yeah.
So our approach is do something, experiment, test. So when we are in a happier environment, it'll be you'll know it.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I love watching you guys grow and succeed and knowing you guys for so long and seeing so much cool stuff happen. I'm going to go back to Ben, the question around, are there models you use trained with HDR content? Or does the output just scale SDR to 10-bit HDR? What an appropriate question for the media production technology.
The quick answer to that
Thank you, Anonymous.
The quick answer to that is we can take SDR content and turn it into EXR HDR content, wherever that came from.
Amazing, amazing. As we're wrapping up, guys, what's next on the horizon? What are you most excited about, Guy? Because you're an excitable kind of guy.
I do get very. You know what? I'm an optimist. And I think there are rocks in the pathway ahead, and we need to be very mindful of it. But I get really excited by the new creative potential actually, and the stuff we're working on. Come over and see it on the stand, especially this this movie we've just premiered at Cannes called Monsters Within. The quality and the creativity that's out of that is, I love, and I'm really surprised.
And you've got a YouTube channel as well. People can watch your website. Yeah.
Yep. So charismatic.studio is where our work is.
Nice. And obviously Guy is here, prime real estate right behind you.
Right there.
And Ben, you've got a stand?
I haven't got a stand, but I do exist.
But you can stand up.
I can stand up.
People can buy you beer to answer your question.
But in terms of things that we're excited about, is that we are now seeing a level of adoption that is really ramping up. So I mean, 6 months ago we were probably getting one new inbound lead a month. We're now getting somewhere between 5 and 6 a week. So you can tell that the industry is starting to adopt, and it's across the spectrum of scripted, unscripted, whatever it is, VFX, and I'm here and I'm ready for that.
Gentlemen, it's my pleasure to chat to you year on year, watching so much cool stuff happen. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Guy. My name is Mookie at the last session. Thank you for supporting MPJS. Thank you.